lesson is going to focus on the expanded color wheel, including the tertiary colors. So I have an example here of an eye that I have used a color wheel for the iris of the eye, and I'm going to show you how to do this from start to finish. So first, let's focus on the color wheel a little bit. The color wheel is made up of primary colors of yellow, blue, and red. If you mix the yellow, blue, and red, you get the secondary colors. If you mix the yellow and the blue, you can get green. If you mix the red and blue, you will get a violet. If you mix a red and yellow, you will make orange. So those are the secondary colors. There's also a new color that you might not have heard of yet, and that is called a tertiary color. Tertiary colors are made when you mix a primary color and a secondary color together. So for instance, if I mix yellow and green, I get a yellow green. If I mix a blue and violet, I get a blue violet. Red and violet, I get red violet, and so forth. So the tertiary colors always have two names. The name of the primary color that makes it up and the name of the secondary color that makes it up. So for this one, this would be called yellow orange. We mentioned the primary color first. So rather than calling it orange yellow, we normally call it yellow orange, but it's the same color. The first thing we need to do when we make our eye, of course, will be to make some circles for the eye. Before I do that, I just want to show you that this can be made in many different kinds of media, so it depends on what you have, what you want to make this out of. This one is made from pastels, and to get those tertiary colors, I've actually blended the two colors of pastel together. So I did not have a yellow green pastel, but I could make it, so I just mixed yellow and green pastel together to make my yellow green. For this one, I did this from marker. Again, I did not have the tertiary colors, so I just blended two colors of marker together to get the tertiary colors. And crayon. Now for most of these crayon colors, I did have the tertiary colors, so I didn't have to make up a yellow green or a blue green or so forth. But if you do not have those tertiary colors in crayon, again, you can just mix those colors. And I'll talk a little bit about that here when it comes time to color it. Before we can color anything, we have to do the drawing. I have a blank paper here, which I'm going to show you how to do the drawing. Now, when we're finished with the drawing part, we're going to have something that looks like this. I do want to note that you can do this in paint. If you have paints available, you could use any kind of paint. You could use watercolor paint, you could use tempera, acrylic paint, whatever you have, and you'll just have to mix those colors together. If you're doing paint, I would not draw the entire eye. I would just draw the circle, because oftentimes paint gets a little messy. So if you're doing paint, I would draw the circle part of the eye, paint it, and then wait till it dries, cut it out, and then paste it to a blank paper, and then create the rest of the eye. That way you'll get a cleaner paper. You could draw the whole eye if you want to, and then if it does turn out neat, then you can just leave it like that. If it does not turn out so well, you can always just cut that portion out and then start over on a clean paper after you paste this down. So I'm just going to assume that we're going to just do the whole drawing. So I'm going to take you all through that. All right, so the first thing I had to do was to gather up some things to use for circles for my eye. So I have a 9 by 11 paper here. You can use whatever size you have, but I found a circle that I could use that would make a really nice size for this size paper. So it depends on the size of paper you're using, what size circle you'll want to get. So I'm going to put this circle here. You could start right in with a marker, tracing it if you want, or you could trace in pencil first. I have a marker here handy. You don't have to use Sharpie. You could use any kind of black marker for this. Sometimes I find it's easier just to trace with marker to begin with, rather than trying to retrace my pencil in a circle. So this is going to be the outside of my color wheel. I'm going to put this inside then, making sure it's pretty even, and I'm going to trace around that. You could also just draw your circles, but I always find it easier to have a little help in drawing the circle so that I get a little bit nicer circle. The next step that I'm going to do, I'm going to have to divide this up so that I can have it, so that I can make room for all of my expanded color wheel colors. If you have a ruler available, you can use it. If not, you can use just a junk mail envelope, another piece of paper that you can use as a straight edge, really anything. I have a ruler, so I'm just going to go ahead and use it. Now for this, I am going to use a pencil. So if you use marker, please switch to pencil now. I'm going to to help me out a little bit, I'm just going to make a mark in the center of my circle so that I know where the center is. Once you have the ruler down, it's kind of hard to see it, what would be the center. So I always like to mark that first. And then I'm going to make a line through both circles and right through that dot. Then I'm going to make another line that crosses it, goes the other direction. All right. Now each of these sections need divided up into 3 pretty much equal parts. If they're not exactly equal, don't worry about that so much, but try to get it as equal as you can. So I'm just going to go ahead around it, and I'm going to make 2 marks so that this, and this section are about equal. And I'm just going to go around the color wheel and do the same thing the entire way around. Just making little marks so that I can see where to put my ruler later. Each of these marks now I'm going to draw towards the middle. So I'm just going to go around my color wheel, and you can turn your paper as you need to. I find it a little bit easier to turn my paper. And as you can see, I'm just taking each mark and I'm drawing into the center. And this will give me a space for every color that I need. All right, so now I have all of my spaces and I'm ready to label it so that I know what color to put in that space. So I need to go around the color wheel now and mark it because I don't want to accidentally color the wrong color. So as you saw in this one, I went around and marked where each of these go. So let's just start with yellow to make it simple. So I'm going to put a Y on the inside circle. Not on the outside, that's going to be for the color, but on the inside circle, I'm going to start out with a Y for yellow, and then a YG for yellow green, a G for green, a BG for blue green, B for blue, BV, blue violet, violet, or purple. It's the same color, but we usually call it blue violet and red violet, so we usually refer to that as violet. Red violet, red, red orange, orange, and yellow orange. Now this order is really important because as we saw on the color wheel, it shows the relationship between colors. So you don't want to get the colors in the wrong order. You have to make it so that you have yellow and blue making green, and then yellow and green would make yellow green, and so forth the whole way around the color wheel. Sometimes you'll see the color wheel start at yellow, and then they'll have the oranges and the warm colors on this side and the cool colors on this side. It really doesn't matter as long as you have these colors in this order. Whichever way you want to go around the color wheel, that doesn't matter as long as each color is beside the correct one. So now that I have that marked, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to color in each of these with the color that I have marked here. So for instance, if I'm using crayon, and for this one I'm going to show you how to do values for your eye. if that's something you want to do. If you just want to color it solid, then that's a solid version here. But I haven't done the value version yet, so I thought I would show you that. So that one is yellow, and then yellow green. And I'm just coloring lightly for now. If you're not planning on doing the value version, then you can just color it nice and dark so that it shows up really well. But I'm going to come back around and I'm going to be adding more color to this. So right now I'm just quickly going and filling in the colors, like I said, that I have right here. And blue. And you can do this right along with me if you want to pause the video and go ahead and do this, or if you just want to work right along with me while I work on mine, you can work on yours. Usually I tend to go a little bit faster than you go, so feel free to pause this so that you can catch up. Okay, this one's blue violet. Sometimes with the violets or purples, how they look in the crayon doesn't really match how they look on paper. So sometimes you might want to try it out on the back so that you can tell what is blue violet and what is actually violet. Because as you can see, they really look very similar, and it's really hard to tell which one is which. So sometimes you can read it. This one says blue violet, but sometimes the paper isn't on there and it's really hard to tell. So this one is the true violet. And I had my crayons kind of lined up in the order that I was going to use them, just to make it easier for me. So if that's something that you want to do, you can do that too. Just make sure they don't roll off the table that you're working on. But I did line mine up just to make it easier. But you have them right here. You have the abbreviated initials, so you'll know which one to do. Just make sure you pay attention. Every time you get a crayon, make sure that it matches what you wrote. So again, if you didn't write down your colors in here, go back in my video and do that. Make sure you mark your colors. All right, got my red orange, my true orange, almost the whole way. And then my yellow orange. So you can see all these colors that I did, they match up with the color in here. So now I said I would show you how to do the values in crayon. So I just have these just colored very lightly. So just to make the eye look a little more interesting, I'm going to go back around the color wheel and I'm just going to darken up the edge here a little bit and a little bit towards the center, and leave a little bit in the middle that's lighter, a lighter value. Value means light or dark. So this is really cool to do in pastel or crayon or colored pencil. You can get different values. Marker's kind of cool to do. I'll show you something that you can do in marker if you want. If you're at home working with markers, something else that you can do with that. So you can do it just straight in with your color, or you can get a little fancy with it and do values or blending. Now, if you don't have these colors, so let's suppose you do not have a yellow-green. That's not really a problem because it can be made. So I'll just pull a paper over here. So I'm just going to take my green crayon, and just to show you how I can get some different colors, I'm just going to color kind of lightly so I can show you how you can mix some colors. So I have green, and on the color wheel, on either side of the green, we have a yellow green and a blue green. So to make yellow green, all I have to do is just take my yellow crayon and color over the green. And this is more yellow than it is green. That's why it's called yellow-green. It's a little bit more on the yellow side because the color yellow would be over here on the color wheel. Then I would have my true green. So I might just want to go over that a little bit more, make that a little bit more filled in. And then blue green is going to look a little bit more on the blue side. So I just color over some of the green with blue to get blue green. You can even go back over and mix the colors together a little bit. Go back over with blue and green. And that would be blue green because on the color wheel, blue green then would be next to regular blue. So you can see, even though I didn't have these tertiary colors, the colors with two names, I could make a yellow green by mixing green and yellow, and I could make a blue green by mixing blue and green. So it's not a problem if you don't have those colors. You can easily make those colors. So I'm just going to real quickly here go back around, and can you see what I'm doing here? I'm making the value darker, and it's creating this little highlight in the middle, which for an eye is going to look really cool when I'm done. So you might want to try this crayon technique if that's something that you think you're going to like doing. I think it looks really interesting. Make sure I got the right purple here. I do. Again, those purples are kind of hard to see. All right, almost finished here. Can you see that highlighted area right in there happening? That's just happening because I am going over the outer edge, and see how I'm doing it? I'm not just going this way around, although I am around the edge, but then I'm going in towards the center, a little bit this way, and then like that, and then back and forth like this. And that's what really creates that highlighted area. I'm coloring darker, but leaving a little bit of area in the middle. And this is really going to make this eye look a little bit rounded, which is a really interesting effect, I think. In a minute, I'll show you, if you're using markers, you can blend in marker also. And then you can just leave it blended. Or if you have a paintbrush and some water, you can actually blend those colors with a little bit of water. And that's really cool. You have to use water-soluble markers to make that work, but you can do that. So I'll just do my last part of my eye, and I'll show you what I mean with those colors of marker. All right, and you can see this is kind of looking rounded just because it has this little highlighted area in the middle. Now, before I finish out my eye here, I do want to show you what I meant with blending the marker. So here I have my blended crayon. So I'm just going to be blending some markers here. Maybe I'll make the same color. So I have some markers here. Since I was doing green, I'll just do that. So if you're using marker, then, and you have the area of green, you can do the green. And then you'll have an area where you'll need, again, the yellow green and the blue green. So I'm just going to color the area I want yellow green, and then color the area that I want to be blue green. And I'm going to make sure I keep a true green in the center. So the area with yellow green, of course, I need to add yellow to the green to make yellow green. And as I color the yellow over the green, you can see that it looks more yellow green than this. This looks just plain green. And then if I want a blue green, I color a little bit of blue over the green, and it's going to turn a more blue green. Different from plain blue, as you can see, this is plain blue. So you can see the variations in the colors. Now that looks really great just like that. So you could just mix your colors right on the page and just leave it like that. If you have some water available, and you don't want to use too much water because it'll pucker the paper, and you don't want it to get all wrinkled, but this is something cool that you can do as well. You can dip your brush in just plain water, and then make sure you wipe it off. You don't want your brush super wet, but I'm just going to wipe that off. And then I'm going to go from the lightest area to the darkest area, and I'm just going to brush over this with a little bit of water. and it turns your marker into watercolor paint, and it's pretty cool, and it kind of just blends the paints together. All right, and I'll just pull this out so you see how you can see that that's making different colors. So just pull that out. So anytime you want to make watercolor paint and you don't have watercolor paint and you have markers, you can actually turn your markers into watercolor paint. So that's pretty cool. And you could do this right on your eye, or you could do this on a paper and then just put your brush in your marker and then paint onto your eye. Paint it like that. So that's just another idea for you. All right, let's go back to the eye that we were working on. And I want to show you how to finish this. So whatever medium you used, and again, if you did it in paint, you may want to just cut that out. If it's all messy around it, just go ahead and cut it out and paste it to a new paper so it looks like this. So the next step that I'm going to do is I am going to draw the outer part of the eye. So I'm going to get my pencil because I want to be able to erase it if I mess this up. So you don't want to go straight in with marker, because then you spend all your time doing this, and then if you mess it up, then you will have to cut this out and transfer it to another paper. But I'm going to make this, I'm going to start up here, and I'm just going to curve it down a little bit till it's maybe center or a little below center of my circle. And then I'm going to curve this down a little bit. Draw very lightly at first. That way you can erase it easy. If you press really hard, you can't erase it. Then I'm going to turn this upside down because I can always make an arc better if I go from the top down rather than trying to make a smile. So it's like I'm making a big frown. And this turns out to look kind of like a football shape. So I'm drawing like a big frown. Usually eyes are just a little bit more flat on the bottom than they are at the top. So that's how I made that, but it's fine. As long as it looks similar to this, you're good. The next thing I want to do is take my marker, and again, it can be this kind of marker, it can be a Sharpie marker, whatever you have. If you're using a Sharpie marker, make sure that you put something underneath it, because Sharpie or the Marks a Lot markers, they really do come through onto the table. So make sure that if you're using a permanent marker, that you put a paper underneath. These Crayola markers, they do not bleed through, so you'd be fine. So I'm just going to use my Sharpie, and I'm going to trace over my line, and I want it to be a nice thick line. So I'm just going to make it nice and thick. If you use a Marks a Lot marker or another kind of permanent marker that has a wider tip, you may not have to go over it as much. But if you use a Sharpie, then you may have to make your lines thicker. We want these to look really bold and show up, so we want these to be nice and thick. If you go over your eye at all at the top, just make sure that you smooth it out so that you don't have a bunch of ragged edges. And I'm going to do the same here. Again, I turned it upside down because I find that so much easier to trace that way, because your arm naturally makes that motion. All right. I can always go back later after this marker has a chance to dry and just clean up my edges. Anywhere where I still see my pencil lines showing, I can just erase and get rid of those. Now it's time for the eyelashes. So eyelashes, the way that they go, you can put one up like that and then one down like that. Anything on the right, it's going to be pointing to the right. Anything on the left will be pointing to the left. So here's what I mean. I'm going to make anything on the right go towards this corner, and anything on the left of this go towards this corner. And that's the way your eyelashes would really go. So I'm just going to make some lines for my eyelashes. Same on this side. Anything that is on this side will be slanted towards this corner, so it goes that way. And anything on this side goes towards this corner, so it goes that way. These are kind of thin. You could leave this as is if you wanted, or you can make them a little fancier. You can make them a little wider. You can even make them kind of curved if you want to. kind of be a little more creative with your eyelashes. But I drew them first, and then I can add any fancy stuff to it. And then, of course, I could color it in. All right, now I'm not going to take the time to color in every eyelash here, since you have seen my finished version. You'll be able to see, you know, how that turns out. But I did want to show you at least one so that you can see how I do it. First I draw it, and then I use that as a guide, and then I color it in. Also, we don't want all this in here anymore, so I'm going to color over that with my black marker, but I'm going to erase it out first just to make it easier to take care of that with my black marker. So just take a minute and just erase that out. It doesn't have to be completely erased because we are going to go over it with black marker, but just make sure that it's a little bit erased so nothing shows up. Also, to make this eye look a little bit more like an eye, here's what I've done. I've used my marker, and I'm not tracing over the entire section that I made with my pencil, but almost to the end here. Then I'm going to go back in each section and maybe add a short and a long line, and a short and a long line. I'm just going to do that the whole way around. Short one and a long one. See how I'm twisting this as I go? And this gives you just a little more interest to your eye. I'm just drawing with my marker right over top of whatever I colored this with. And then I can use my marker to color it in. Sharpie doesn't have a very broad point, so I'm going to switch to this marker to color it in. All right, and again, once this is all colored in and my eyelashes are all finished, then my eye will be complete. So when you're done, your eyes will look like this, depending on what media you use. Notice how the eyelashes are all colored in. You have a white to the eye, don't color that part. This will be your color wheel. This will all be colored in. That's the pupil of the eye. And there you have it. That is all finished. My color wheel eye is complete and ready to turn in. And I hope you have a lot of fun doing this. I am interested to see them, and I'm sure that they'll look great. So now it's your turn. Replay this video, work right along with me so that you can get your eye complete.